A young man with the powers of Ultraman must train a baby kaiju to save humanity from the destruction of the mighty Gigantron. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Ultraman, Rising, from 2024. As a child, Kenji Sato, a Japanese young boy with a passion for baseball, dreamed of becoming Ultraman to protect his country from the attack of the kaijus. The young boy was living happily with his family when, one day, a Titan attacked Japan and his parents received a call from Dr. Onda, in which he warned them that Gigantron was approaching. According to the scientist, all the government's defenses have been destroyed, which means that every family living in Tokyo is in danger. Determined to protect his wife and son, Hayao decides to join Dr. Onda in this battle and becomes Ultraman. 20 years later, Kenji is living in Los Angeles and has become a great baseball player, as this was his late mother's favorite sport. After becoming the greatest in his league, Kenji returns to Japan because he needs to replace his father as Ultraman, since Hayao is an old man and can no longer continue fighting. Despite being the Giants' best hitter, the youngster leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to being a superhero, as he loves to show off during battles. Because of this, Kenji can't concentrate on the fight and often ends up being defeated. Luckily, government agents show up to capture the monster before Kenji is eliminated and order Ultraman to leave, as he has no authorization to act in that area. When he is threatened, Kenji starts to get stressed and his colored timer starts flashing. Knowing that he will soon lose his powers, he decides to leave and gets on his motorcycle to go to his next appointment. As a baseball star, Kenji has to give an interview to Amy Wakata, a prestigious Japanese reporter. During dinner, Amy asks about Emiko, Kenji's mother, who moved with the young man to Los Angeles when he was still young. Suddenly, Chiho, Ami's daughter, appears and interrupts the interview to put the Ultraman mask on Kenji. Meanwhile, that evening, Dr. Onda, who has now become the superintendent of the FDK, is at the HQ of the Kaiju Defense Force to announce a new strategy for attacking the Titans. Hours later, when he gets home, Kenji watches the last video his mother recorded for him years ago before she disappeared. Since then, the young man has never stopped looking for her, even after Emiko was presumed perished. Deep down, he still hopes to see his mother again and, until that day comes, Kenji strives to do his best to make her proud. After the last battle, the player picked up an injury to his left shoulder, but that didn't stop him from taking the field for the next game. Due to the injury, Kenji ends up suffering 2 strikes and decides to change his position during the match. This way, he can compensate for his injured shoulder and hit the ball masterfully. Despite not being at the stadium to watch the game, Hayao follows his son on TV and cheers every one of his victories. Just then, a kaiju alert goes off and one of the FDK's ships is destroyed during the chase. When he sees the explosion and realizes that Gigantron is back, Kenji leaves the field and transforms into Ultraman to strike the monster. Immediately afterwards, the creature gets up and attacks the enemy with its flames, but Ultraman manages to protect himself. When he realizes he won't be able to defeat him, Gigantron takes the metal sphere he stole from the FDK agents and tries to escape. Seeing the Titan being pursued, Kenji decides to go after it to stop the government agents from trying to eliminate it, as numerous FDK aircraft are firing at the creature. To save the kaiju, Ultraman tries to convince her to hand over the orb, but the monster refuses and continues to try to escape. On Dr. Onda's orders, the agents fire dozens of missiles at Gigantron and the superhero ends up being hit too. Immediately, they both fall into the ocean and, luckily, Ultraman manages to survive without suffering any serious injuries. Even after the attack, the kaiju continues to try to protect the sphere, but ends up dying and Kenji discovers that inside that capsule was Gigantron's egg. Just then, the eggshell begins to crack and the young man sees the baby hatching in his hands. Seeing that the Titan has sacrificed herself to save her baby, Ultraman decides to run away with it in order to keep it safe from the FDK. When he arrives at his hideout, Kenji realizes that the baby is very attached to him and Mina, his robot-like virtual assistant, says that the baby kaiju thinks Ultraman is her mother. Terrified by this news, the young man's heartbeat accelerates and he reverts to his original form. When she realizes that her mother has disappeared, the baby kaiju starts crying and her screams destroy everything around her. While fleeing the attack, Kenji activates one of the containment units and manages to trap the creature. Not knowing what to do in this situation, the young man has no choice but to ask his father for help. However, they still have unfinished business, as they have hardly seen each other in the last 20 years, since Hayao preferred to stay in Japan to study the kaijus instead of going to Los Angeles with his family. After arguing with his son, the old man decides to leave and Kenji spends the whole night trying to make his daughter understand that he and Ultraman are the same person. The young man then has to figure out how to feed her, and, after realizing that the baby likes fish, he decides to go fishing. In the morning, Kenji is informed about the next baseball game and goes to the stadium while Mina takes care of the baby. When he returns home, the young man discovers that he will have to look after the baby until Mina can find the location of Kaiju Island, as no one knows exactly where this place is. Over the next few days, Kenji begins to feel exhausted by his role as a solo father, and his performance in the field goes from bad to worse. Within weeks, his own fans began to hate him, because now he can't win any more games. After a long run of consecutive defeats, Kenji has to answer to his coach, who threatens to expel him from the team. Frustrated and with no friend to share his feelings with, the player decides to call Amy and ask for advice on how to reconcile work with the task of looking after a young daughter. After listening attentively to what the journalist has to say, Kenji invites her to dinner at the weekend and realizes that the paternal routine can be much more rewarding than he imagined. With Mina's help, the young man creates a simulation of a baseball field and teaches his daughter how to hit, just as his mother taught him when he was little. On Saturday night, Kenji leaves Mina to look after the baby kaiju while he goes out to meet Amy at a restaurant. During dinner, while the couple are talking, the baby wakes up and Mina does everything she can to entertain her. However, after eating, the little one discovers a new ability and, for the first time, releases a powerful laser beam from her mouth. In a short period of time, the Titan accidentally destroys the whole house and Mina tries to calm him down with an inflatable doll. At the sight of Kenji's replica, the baby calms down, but then releases a new atomic breath and explodes the doll. Believing that he has attacked his father, the baby starts crying and becomes desperate. At this point, he tries to escape and destroys the main entrance gates. When the situation has spiraled out of control, Kenji receives a call from Mina and learns that the kaiju has managed to escape. After apologizing to Amy, the young man gets on his motorcycle and rides towards the city center, where the pink creature has been spotted. When he discovers the baby's whereabouts, Dr. Onda sends his men after him and Amy finds her mother and daughter wandering the streets of Tokyo. Having been abandoned during dinner, the woman decides to go out for ice cream with her family, but the trio end up being chased by the baby. After finding the creature, Kenji transforms into Ultraman to take it back, but ends up being attacked by accident because the baby is suffering from reflux. After attacking her own father, the little monster escapes once again and destroys every town she passes through. While looking for the baby, Ultraman sees her climbing a tower and decides to go after her. However, before the superhero can reach her, Dr. Wave sends his drones to capture the Titan and throws tranquilizer darts to put her out. When he sees the baby falling, Ultraman reaches out to pick it up and ends up surrounded by the FDK. Despite being in danger, Kenji refuses to hand the baby over to the government and decides to run away with it. When he realizes that the little one is hurt, the young man contacts his father and asks for his help to take care of her. Seeing a kaiju baby for the first time in his life, Hayo is impressed and promises that he will do everything in his power to help it. While Ultraman tries to calm the baby down, Hayo does the consultation and gives the diagnosis. Seeing that the Titan is frightened, the old man shows him a stuffed bunny that belonged to Kenji and manages to calm him down. While Professor Sato puts the little monster's broken arm back in place, Dr. Onda watches the video of the day his family was wiped out by the Titans. Despite not being able to capture the baby, the man is satisfied with the information his agents have collected. As expected, the baby has the ability to echolocate and, sooner or later, will try to go home. When this happens, the FDK agents must follow her to find Kaiju Island and destroy all the monsters once and for all. After relaying the updates to the captain of his team, Dr. Onda walks to his secret room to check on the progress of his new project. Contrary to what everyone believed, Gigantron did not perish during the FDK attack. Despite being unconscious, the Titan is still alive and could wake up at any moment. While the baby rests, Hayo turns on the TV and shows his son that Ultraman is being sought by the Japanese authorities. Dr. Onda has managed to make everyone believe that the superhero is actually a villain for protecting a kaiju instead of helping the country get rid of this threat. Now, father and son will have to work together to return the baby home, but the problem is that the location of Kaiju Island remains a mystery. According to Hayo, even if the island is found, the baby could perish of hunger, cold, or even be devoured by another Titan, as it doesn't yet know how to defend itself. Therefore, the only effective solution to preserve the little monster's life is to raise it and teach it to fight anyone who tries to harm it. From that day on, Hayo decided to name the creature Emmy, after his late wife, Amiko. When the baby recovers, father and daughter start training and, over time, Emmy even learns to fish on her own. Meanwhile, Kenji's career takes off again and he becomes a positive highlight in every match, regaining the public's approval. Thanks to the hitter, the Giants qualify for the playoffs and nobody understands what has happened to Kenji, because as well as shining on the field, he has abandoned his showboating attitude and started to bring harmony to his team. After several weeks trapped inside the hideout, Hayo decides to take Emmy for a walk and invites Kenji to visit his old house. When he was little, the young man and his family used to go to a country house in the middle of nowhere. When he gets there, he discovers that his father has also dedicated years of his life to searching for Emiko and has suffered just as much as Kenji from the disappearance of his beloved. While rummaging through the house, the young man finds an autographed baseball that his father picked up during one of the games they attended together and remembers how happy he was during his childhood. In an attempt to get closer to his old man, Kenji invites him to play a game and, for the first time in 20 years, they have fun together. That night, while Emmy is playing with Mina, the young man asks for some tips on how to become a better superhero, as he hasn't yet learned how to get the most out of Ultraman. During the conversation, the pair notice that the stars are moving and Mina announces the arrival of the FDK agents. Immediately, Kenji rushes to protect Emmy, but the baby proves capable of defending herself and eliminates all the drones with her atomic breath. After the attack, a shell begins to form around the baby kaiju's body and Hayo reveals that it has entered the pupa stage. Soon, Emmy will transform into a new version of herself, but until that happens, she is completely vulnerable. Professor Sato decides to call the ship to transport her to safety, but ends up being shot at by FDK drones. Seeing his father seriously injured, Kenji awakens his rage and transforms into Ultraman to attack his enemies. Although all his ships have been defeated, Dr. Onda is pleased to discover that the tracker has been successfully inserted into the kaiju pupa. After the battle, Kenji managed to take Emmy back to the hideout and ask Mina to help him monitor his father's vital signs. As a result of the attack, Hayo suffered serious internal injuries and it is impossible to know whether he will survive. Suddenly, Kenji hears a strange noise and, just then, the cocoon formed around Emmy's body breaks. At the end of the metamorphosis, the baby acquires a pair of wings and crawls out of hiding. As he looks towards the east, Kenji spots the silhouette of Gigantron and Emmy doesn't think twice before answering her mother's call. At this point, the young man tries to stop the baby, as he suspects it's an ambush. But before he can act, his hideout is hit by an air raid. Luckily, the young man survived the bombing, but Mina's systems were seriously damaged and the chamber where Hayo's body was resting fell into the ocean. In a single day, Kenji lost Emmy and his father and even Mina, the virtual assistant who had accompanied him since he was a child. After saying goodbye to his old friend, the young man checks his watch to see that the tracker he implanted in the baby kaiju is still working and decides to go after it. When Ultraman approaches, Dr. Onda orders the zombie Gigantron to attack him, but the hero strikes back with his punches and throws the creature away. However, even after being hit, the monster gets up and attacks Ultraman again, throwing him to the bottom of the ocean. Determined to prevent Emmy from being taken, Kenji makes another attempt, but Onda fires dozens of missiles at his opponent. The young man immediately creates a shield to protect himself, but one of the shots hits Emmy and the little one falls into the sea. Seeing his baby unconscious, Ultraman goes into a rage and attacks Gigantron. However, seconds before he can eliminate the Titan, he notices Emmy's desperation and stops the attack. At that moment, Dr. Onda takes the opportunity to act and orders the kaiju to eliminate his opponent. After being hit by the atomic breath, Kenji falls into the water and is sinking when Hayo appears to save him. Surprised, the young man celebrates the fact that his father is still alive and Emmy tries to protect them from Gigantron's attack. With the baby's help, the Titan manages to get rid of the armor that allowed Dr. Onda to control her. So the scientist decides to start Plan B after transferring his entire crew to the escape ships. Onda fires a laser beam at Ultraman and Kenji and then transforms his ship into a giant robot. At the sight of the enemy, the young man transforms to help his father fight him and the scientist uses his costume to attack them. In an attempt to immobilize him, the pair try to grab the robot's arms, but Onda manages to throw them away. The man then uses his shield to attack them and protects himself from the atomic breath released by Gigantron and her offspring. Determined to use his entire arsenal to destroy his opponents, Dr. Onda sends missiles to blow them up, but Kenji and his father manage to create a force field to protect themselves. With the support of the kaijus, father and son go after the robot and team up to try to bring it down. However, just as he was about to be defeated, the scientist pulls a card out of his sleeve and starts spinning the top of his suit. This way, as well as getting rid of Gigantron's attack, he manages to send Kenji to the coast and Emmy goes after him. When he sees his son being hit, Hayo is furious and musters all his energy into a single counterattack. Meanwhile, Kenji tries to recover and ends up being spotted by the humans who were crossing the bridge. Among them are Amy and her family, and when she sees Ultraman, Chiho is excited to meet him in person. At that moment, Professor Sato manages to knock Onda down and the man is about to be defeated by the atomic breath, but he manages to activate his suit's turbines and get rid of Gigantron's attack. Seeing Ultraman right in front of him, the scientist takes the opportunity to vent all his anger and frustration, as he trusted the superhero to protect his family, but this didn't happen. While blaming Hayo for the perishment of his wife and daughter, Onda kicks his opponent in the knee and prepares to cut him in half with his sword. However, before the scientist had a chance to complete his revenge, Kenji appeared and grabbed the giant's right hand to protect his father. Gigantron then grabs the enemy's left arm so that Emmy can put her hitting skills to use and tear off one of the robot's limbs. Realizing he's losing the battle, Dr. Onda tries to strike Ultraman again, but ends up losing his sword and his 4 opponents join forces to defeat him. Together, they finally manage to destroy the suit and Onda is trapped inside the armor. He then activates the self-destruct mode and uses his last seconds to watch an old video of his family. At that moment, Kenji realizes that the suit is about to self-destruct and, if it does, all of Tokyo's millions of inhabitants will be wiped out. So he decides to use his powers to save the citizens and creates a shield around the suit. That way, the explosion will be contained, but Kenji knows that he probably won't be able to survive. Despite this, the superhero decides to sacrifice himself for the nation, but in the end, he manages to come out of the battle alive. Due to his injuries, Kenji is unable to play in the championship final, but his team still wins. Now that the FDK is no longer after the Titans, the young man and his father have the chance to accompany Emmy and Gigantron to the island of the Kaijus to continue the search for his missing mother. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.